What's up, guys? So today we have a question from XOR10. He says, did you ever have any darknet enemy vendors? Did you ever spot a glowie on a website you used to sell on? What would be the best security measures for someone who wanted to dive into the dark web? I know disabling JavaScript and all, but I mean even deeper than that. So to start off, I did. Yeah, to answer the first question, I did have kind of enemy vendors. And usually those were guys who not even like the dudes that I'm thinking of were guys that like they're not like your classic business rivals, you know, like I sell something, he sells something, and we go back and forth. It's more like we're on the forums and like this guy on, you know, a certain site gets tons of complaints. And I know he's selective scamming. So like selective scamming would be like, you know, someone has 2,000 sales right on a site, and what they start doing is on whatever selected orders, they start sending out trash. So it might be like, you know, you order $500 worth of X and I send like, you know, a rock in a box with a bunch of padding. And that way, if you dispute it, I can say I have a tracking number. And saying I have a tracking number and being able to prove it in a dispute resolution, the only way you can counter that as a customer is to record opening the package. That's really it. So you're kind of screwed. So you like paying attention to vendors' terms and conditions are very important in that aspect. But like those people are pissed, obviously, when they get ripped off and they leave bad reviews. And you know, at the end of the day, you have disgruntled customers who will leave bad reviews. I've had a couple, you know, but like some of these dudes, like I've seen them where it's like 50 bad reviews a month, and like they might, you know, make 1,000 sales in a month. So it's like, oh, well, you know, it's really not that many. But it's kind of like you can just tell if you've been on the darknet for a while, like when a vendor starts selective scamming. And it's kind of like being able to tell when a darknet market is about to exit scam. You know, it's kind of half intuition and half red flags that you notice mixed with orange flags, you know? And like those kind of guys I called out, you know, like I would call out on the forum, oh, I have the best, blah, blah. And I'd be like, yeah, man, like, you know, if people get it, you know, like you know, it is what it is, the truth. So like, you tell me I'm wrong, here's these reviews, they're right here, you know? So like that's important. And then like, you know, you see that same guy, like let's say that market exit scams, you see that same guy on the next market, you know, talking about how like all his customers are happy, and like now that market's gone, so you can't disprove them. But like you, like I would still try to be like, dude, like you're, you know, what about the last site we were on, blah, blah. And you know they'll lie about, oh, that's nonsense, blah, blah. But then what happens is like the people that he ripped off at some point, like, yeah, you know, like, you know, 2 happy times, 2 Israelis, 2, you know, so those were kind of like my rivals, like those people who gave other darknet vendors a bad name in general. It wasn't really people doing honest business that I had any qualms with. We might be competitors, but we are kind of brothers in arms because we're both doing this. We're both risking decades in prison, and so it's kind of how I saw it. It's not how they all see it, but like it's kind of how I saw it. So then the next question: did you ever spot a glowie on the website you used to sell on? So one thing about me, I'll be completely open and honest with you. If I know something, I'll tell you. If I don't know something, I'll tell you. And I don't know what a glowie is. Sounds like a euphemism or like some kind of slang, but I'm not sure what it is that you're referring to. So sorry about that. So the last part, what would be the best security measure for someone who wanted to dive into the dark web? Take your time. Don't dive, you know? learn about the technology that you're going to be using, you know. You like, oh, I'm going to be using the Tor network. Okay, do you know what a network is? Can you describe it to me? Can you define it? Like understand the basics of what it is you're doing, right? Like if you've never used power tools before, you're not just going to pick one up and, go for it. I mean, you could. It's something I wouldn't recommend. It's like if you haven't learned about chemistry, it's probably not wise to go into a lab and start mixing things, because you want to see what colors they'll produce, right? Education. That's it. Like you can give someone a list disabling JavaScript and like all those kind of things. But at the end of the day, education is paramount, and it's something, if you gloss over it, and anyone who tells you just do this and you'll be good, I discourage that kind of thinking, because really it takes a long time to understand everything that goes into it, whether you're going to be a darknet vendor or a buyer or any of that stuff. If you're not going to do either of those, then just hop on. Who cares? You're not doing anything illegal anyway. But learn, investigate, take your time, spend your time research and learning and teaching yourself about those systems. If it's like, Tor, learn about Tor. If it's, about PGP, learn about that, but learn about all the things that go into it, right? And then once you do that and you understand those things, you'll understand how those things can coexist and come together, and those systems can be leveraged against each other and work together or against each other. And understanding how they work will allow you to, it's like, thinking you're safe, because you had a locksmith come to your house and he was like, he made sure you had good locks and he set up a camera and all this other stuff. And now you feel safe. But just because you feel safe doesn't mean you are safe, right? So like the day you lock your keys out of your house, you find a way to get into your house in 5 minutes. Feeling of safety now is gone. Or you get robbed. The feeling of safety is gone. Your privacy is violated. So with that, I would just say, keep in mind that understanding and education is the most important countermeasure that you will ever have. Because if you're just doing what someone told you to do and you don't actually understand what you're doing, it's very dangerous, to just blindly trust anyone, even myself. Like, I don't even want you to trust me, but if you can conclusively prove me wrong, please do, because at the end of the day, I get to learn from that. It's not about ego for me. It's about education. It's about learning. And, like only through understanding these things and understanding how they work, will you be able to actually defend yourself. It's like expecting to be a chess master because you read a book about it, but you never actually played it, right? So understand those things by messing with them, by toying with them, by using them, by exploring them, in a legal sense, before you go trying to hop on and find a master, checklist. There's always good things, proper OPSEC and, best practices, but that's all those things is they're best practices. Look at like Packet Storm Security and Hacker News and, stay up to date on, what they're talking about, the exploits and all those kind of things that happen. And I think you'll be infinitely better off for it. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video today, and leave a like if you want to get this content out there, and subscribe if you haven't. And I'll see you in the next video.